You thought.
Aloha from Hawaii. Howdy doody.
And
What
good
are you?
morning from the Emerald Isle. It's just after 9 a.m. here. How are you?
I am doing well. I know we were supposed to record this yesterday, but Mr. Migraine came along and whooped my ass yesterday. He gave me the Mike Tyson uppercut, so wasn't
That's okay.
able to do it.
I'm smiling at the maniacal intro with Brad Dorff's laugh. It's just iconic. It really is.
It's like the Mark Hamill Joker laugh. You can pick it out of a crowd if you had to. Very distinguishable.
We'll get to Mr. Hamill in a while.
Yeah, because Mr. Hamill is actually part of what our topic is today, the
Yeah.
Child's Play franchise, Mr. Chucky, Charles Lee Ray.
Today we're talking about toys, kids.
Yeah.
Bad motherfucking toys.
Yeah, toys that'll kill your ass.
Yeah. I think I probably first saw the original Child's Play sometime around the early 90s, I'd say. It's hard for me to think now because I don't think it definitely wasn't there in the 80s for me because the first one came around in 1988.
Yeah, November 9th, 1988.
So it would probably have taken a little bit of a while before it transitioned over to us here, via videos and all that. And I don't remember having it I don't remember it having a theatrical release here either. So, do you remember having it having a theatrical release?
It did. The first second, I want to say right up until Bride of Chucky, it had theatrical releases. And then when you got the Curse and Colt was when it was direct to video.
Yeah. But we'll start where it all began in 1988. And we're literally talking about the birth of a horror icon. And it was created by, as we know, Don Mancini. And Don Mancini would say that he had quite a conservative upbringing, which is surprising that he would create such a character, and that he did.
Well, I had a conservative upbringing, and look at me, I love this shit, but I grew up in that part of the world where it's primarily conservative thought and thinking.
But his creation, it's ironic actually how this movie came to be. You had Don Mancini with his idea of this doll who would be gifted to a child. And initially, the idea would be that the doll would bleed if you cut it, and you would have to buy bandages for it, little supplementary pieces for the toy. And he would become so overinvested with the child, Andy Barclay, that he would become protective to a point where he would become murderous. But the director, Tom Holland, not the Tom Holland who we now know today, as in Spider-Man, because I'd say Tom Holland in 1988 was probably still sitting in the back of his dad's sack somewhere, But there was what some people would call creative differences on this movie. And these creative differences were, in hindsight now, very positive creative differences, because Tom Holland wanted to he wanted to use the voodoo element, and Don Mancini wasn't apparently fond of that idea. But they collaborated, I suppose. They were working with MGM at the time, so this
Mhm.
started off as an MGM product, and despite these creative differences, the whole thing came together and it worked wonderfully. And as I say, the birth of a horror icon was created in that of Chucky. Now, the name um, of the human character that we see at the beginning, there's a very interesting story to that. So he's called Charles Lee Ray, and Charles Lee Ray is a combination of three very infamous killers. One is Charles Manson. Lee is Lee Harvey Oswald, and Ray is James Earl Ray, who
Mhm.
assassinated Martin Luther King. There's another very interesting story actually where James Earl Jones was actually created. Sorry, he was gifted a statue or something, prize one time for his work on screen. And instead of writing James Earl Jones, apparently they wrote James Earl Ray underneath it. But that's a different story entirely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so James Earl Ray um, and Charles Manson, and in the middle you've got Lee, as in Lee Harvey Oswald. You had Charles Lee Ray, and he was the Lakeshore Strangler. And our movie starts off with him evading Chris Sarandon's character, Detective Mike, as he's called. And that is where we're first introduced to the whole idea of voodoo, because he goes into the toy store
Yeah,
and
he's
he converts
mortally
into.
wounded. He wanders into the toy store dying. He's bleeding out,
Mm,
profusely bleeding.
yeah, and he transfers his soul into that of a doll. Mm. So and then immediately Andy Bartley is introduced, played by Alex Vincent, and he he's a sweet little kid, and it seems like the good guys dolls are everywhere. They're like the whatever the most popular toy is today, Pokemon or whatever the case may be,
Well,
because
according to interviews, Don Mancini was heavily influenced by the Cabbage Patch toy craze of the 1980s. I mean,
all right,
when
okay,
you look at Christmases was God, what was it, like 84, 85 when them things came out. And there was literally this was back when probably the beginning of when parents were literally fist fighting in toy aisles in stores for these
yeah.
things. I mean, it was crazy. I remember it. Wasn't there, but I remember seeing and hearing about it on the news, and it was like everybody wanted a Cabbage Patch doll. Every kid, me included, I was among those. I don't know what it was about it that all of us were just enamored with these damn things. But Don Mancini took inspiration from that, and that's where we get Chuck.
And then they were a thing in Ireland as well, Cabbage Patch dolls. But for me, being the person I am, I was more enamored by the Garbage Pail Kids, if you remember
Me
those.
too.
Yeah. And I think my sister may have had a Cabbage Patch doll, but I didn't have one. Um, but I collected the Tops cars for the Garbage Pail Kids, and I loved them. And there was just some brilliant names there. Like one of the most memorable ones that comes off the top of my head was a doll called Dana Druff. Obviously had a scalp condition. But um, yeah, and
And you had
and and it
Vicky
reminds me of that. Wait,
Vicky Vomit and stuff like that. It's just a girl that
yes,
just couldn't stop
yes,
peeing
yeah,
puss. He was like squeezing zits on his face. I almost got expelled from school for them damn cards.
And it's a pity that when they tried to make the movie, it didn't work out so well. And I'm sure there's some studio somewhere trying to reinvent that franchise the
I
same way as they're trying
I
to bring back the Gremlins.
I liked the movie. I did. Sadly, it's a guilty pleasure.
I may watch it again, yeah. But I've seen it a few times. It's not bad. Yeah, yeah. So you, as you say, it's inspired by the Garbage Pail Kid, or the Cabbage Patch Dolls, and he sees them on the TV, and he wants one, and he's this kid living with his mom. She's rearing him on her own, and he's a lovely, sweet kid. You see at the beginning he makes her breakfast, in a very naive way, and his birthday gift is clothes. So he's very disappointed and I love that piece at the beginning where you see this box and you think it is the doll, and it's not. It's clothing, you know. And he keeps harping on about it until eventually she picks one up off of the black market, off of some bum selling it on the street. Yeah, and that's when we're first introduced to Chucky. Your friend till the end. And it's it's a bit like Jaws in a way because you you really don't see Brad Dourif's um, interpretation of the doll until about maybe 35, 40 minutes in because you see the POV of him, you know? He,
That was what I was going to bring up. The POV to me is some of the best camera work because it has a Sam Raimi kind of vibe from Evil Dead where you don't see the deadite, but you can see it coming towards you. It's the
yeah.
same thing that they did. It's kind of what they did with Halloween in '78 with young
Mhm,
Michael
mhm,
Myers.
mhm,
And they pulled to me was one of the standout things of Child's Play was you were literally at a child's height close down to the floor, so you
yeah,
clearly
yeah.
were seeing everything through the eyes of this doll, and it just made you more immersed in the character.
And it was brilliantly done. And not only did you have uh, a live actor playing the doll at times, but you had these incredible puppetry pieces as well for its time, which were brilliantly done. And if we're to go to probably the best scene in the film for me, and one I can watch again and again and again, is where Karen Barkley is suspect of something. Already she's lost her friend who has had an accident via falling off the window, and the kid is telling her that Chucky did it because she was a bitch. Um, it's when she picks him up and she says, "God damn it, you talked to me around throwing you in the fire." And when he comes to life, that's brilliant. You know, it's just, it's an iconic moment in horror film. The way he gets so angry and he says, "You fucking bitch, you fucking slut." And I love that piece in the film. And she is then on the same level as her son in that she knows that this is a doll that is alive and murderous, and she is trying to convince the cops that something is wrong, and of course they assume that she's off her rocker.
Well,
But
they think the kid is a murdering psychopath.
yeah, they have him locked up in a very kind of almost like Shutter Island type asylum for kids. They have him, uh, in a locked room. I mean, today in mental health units, you don't lock anybody into a room if they're regardless of how bad they are in terms of their mental health. You have close observations on them, but you don't lock the door. And you have Chucky then desperately trying to find young Bartley to, do his spell and try and embody him, because he goes back to he goes back and he takes retribution out on the guy that fucked him over that night, Eddie Caputo. And he blows his house up, if you remember, with turning on the gas. And then he goes to the person who would have taught him the voodoo,
Yeah, and he
and he
makes a voodoo doll of him and starts putting pins and stuff in it.
mm, and that's actually because he's known as the Lakeshore Strangler, but that's the first stabbing thing he does in it, really, because he kills that character via stabbing the voodoo doll. Yeah, and of course they get to him before he dies, and he explains to Karen Bartley and Detective Mike that this is what's wrong. And he still doesn't take it seriously until you have that brilliant scene in the car where Chris Sarandon is attacked by the dog, to where he puts in the cigarette lighter in the car to light up a cigarette, and all of a sudden you've got this ligature behind his neck whereby this small little doll is trying to kill him, and then everything becomes a reality. But the brilliant thing about this film, and what they didn't do in later movies with dolls, is that he was so animated. Like if you look at Annabelle, sorry, that's not a great film. Even Annabelle Creation, which got quite good reviews, still wasn't great. You know, there's it's one of these things where the camera turns one way, and when it turns back, the doll's head might move like this, or the doll might move from one position to the other. But you don't see Annabelle
Puppet
walking around.
Well, I was going to say Puppet Master might be the only other thing that would be close to this, but even none of those really speak. They're more silent characters that are controlled by another force.
And there's another very kind of obscure cult one called Demonic Toys as
Yep,
well,
I've
which
heard of
is
that.
yeah, which isn't bad, but it isn't child's play. And it it everything about the film is brilliant. In fairness, it was made for just under 13 million, and it made 44 million, which was very good. And I got a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes to this day. So it was definitely a crowd pleaser, and it was definitely one for the diehard horror fans. So, and to me, it's just one of the most. He's up there. He's up there with Freddy and Pennywise and Michael Myers and all those. Chucky's there. He is. He's
The thing I
brilliant.
liked about Chucky is he, like Freddy Krueger, broke the mold of normal slasher villains. When you look at two of the most well known is, of course, Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees. But then you've got others like the soldier from the Prowler, Angela from Sleepaway Camp. Um, I forget the name of the one from the movie Pieces, on and on and on. The
Mm.
difference between them is those characters were more introverted and they were just quiet. They never spoke, they never made a sound. Angela did, for the most part in Sleepaway Camp, but she was still very introverted as well.
Yeah.
Freddy and Chucky is just balls to the wall out there, and they've got wisecracks for days, and it you almost don't want to hate them because they make you laugh at some of the shit that comes out of their mouth. I mean, Robert Englund and Brad Dourif just have wisecracks and just a quick wit, and they bring that to these respected characters, and it completely changed. It flipped the script on what slasher villains normally are.
And the choice of Brad Dourif as um, Chucky was fantastic. I mean, people may have seen Brad Dourif prior to this in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and in later years they would have seen him in the Rob Zombie Halloween remakes as the sheriff. But I think there isn't a shadow of a doubt that he will, just like Robert Englund, be always remembered for playing Chucky, despite him just doing the voice. Yeah, but in rehearsals he would have been there with the actors, and he would have been himself, and he would have acted like the puppet around him, and did the voice, etc. In actual fact, there's a story where his daughter Fiona Dorff, who we'll come to later as well, she was in the studio where he was voicing the character, and he was doing the VO of where Chucky gets burned, and he was doing the horrific screams and stuff, and she found it very unsettling, and she started to cry. So yeah, but the the end of the movie is it's in Scream where they always say you got to shoot him in the head, you or like in the zombie movies where they say you got to shoot him in the head, you got to make sure they're dead and all that. And with the end of Child's Play, there is that iconic line where he's there and he's trapped inside in the fireplace, and he turns all sweet and he says, "But I thought we were going to be friends till the end." And Alex Vincent just says, "This is the end, friend," and he lights him up, and that's brilliant. That's a really iconic piece of horror, and of course, it isn't the end
No,
because he
but
comes back.
that whole burning scene just gave me Stripe from the Gremlins vibes, where Stripe was in the fountain and the sun could
Yep,
come in, and the way he
yep,
melted. The
yeah,
same with Chuck.
yeah. And then, of course, you've got Detective Mike's partner turning up, and you know, thinking that this is all absolute lunacy, what's going on here, until such time as this headless body comes out of the vent and tries to choke him, and then the whole film comes to a climax, and it's, as I say, to this day, it's still a great movie. It is. Mm. But moving on to the second one, an awful lot of the Child's Play fans will say, and we're doing these in order. We're not doing these ranked from best to worst or anything. We're doing these in order. In 1990, MGM were no longer involved, and Universal took over. And to this day, and any horror fans I've ever spoken to, or any horror fans I've ever watched YouTube videos of, they will always say that Child's Play 2 is their outright favorite. Absolutely outstanding and incredible. And it was for so many reasons. Because you had the the mobility of the character, and the facial expressions were much more pronounced and animated. And again, it just had this brilliant story. So you have Andy Barclay's character is taken into foster care. And Ginny Agutter from An American Werewolf in London plays the foster mom. And she's married to a bit of a dick called Phil. And his mother is in a psychiatric ward. So that's and the reason she is in a psychiatric ward is because she didn't want to come back. The actor didn't want to come back for any more of them. I think she had just done her piece, and she met her partner on not sure if they're married or not, but she met her partner on the set of Child's Play. So I think she just kind of thought, I've done my bit, and
Yeah,
that was it.
I heard it was kinda just a thing with her, she just wanted it to be a one-off and done and just,
Mm.
which they could have easily. I mean, as many actresses there is in Hollywood, I'm sure they could have found somebody that looked like her, but could they have played the character the same? Maybe not. Maybe that's why Don Mancini went the way he did. I mean, when you
But
think of
they went in a brilliant direction with it. You know, it starts off with you see the doll being reconstructed, and all of the debris being taken off it, and the whole thing, the eyes being taken out, and the whole doll itself just being spray painted with the freckles and all that. And the CEO of the company trying to rubbish the claims from Andy Barkley and everything that has been said. Because, as you can imagine, companies today that are selling toys or even something like Marvel, look at DC at the moment. I mean, Jesus, the controversy surrounding DC at the moment with Ezra Miller is is worrying.
yeah,
Um,
I live in Hawaii where a lot of this took place. Uh, where he acted a fool over here with the locals over here, and yeah, it was nasty,
and
and
now you have some very inappropriate claims being made about Ezra Miller. So that's
as much as
causing.
he seems like a likable guy on screen,
Mm,
from what I've understood, he is not a good person. He is a
yeah,
very troubled young man.
yeah, and they're painting a terrible picture of him. And if it's true, then
I
he
think he
he just.
needs mental help. I mean, I think, to be truthfully honest, I don't know, you work in that field,
Mm,
but something about him strikes me as maybe he's got some kind of schizophrenia of some sort.
I don't know because I'm only going from what I hear in the media. But this has affected DC and Warner Brothers deeply because this is a $200 million movie apparently, and you have a great director in the shape of Andy Machete. And people need to remember, and we go back to the good guy company, that there are people working in these companies that have mortgages to pay. There are carpenters and electricians working on these movies, and all kinds of people in the background like makeup artists, etc. So in Child's Play 2, you've got this company who has employees that are relying on wages, and you've got the CEO, of course, who wants to make bank. And he's like, no, we're going ahead with Good Guy Dolls, and we are basically a bit like what Warner Brothers did at the beginning of the Ezra Miller controversy.
Yeah,
They
they
kind of
refuted
they
they refuted
ignored
the
it.
claims, and they tried to save face because big companies like that have stockholders, and the last thing you want is your stockholders to start losing money, because then when they start losing money, then your employees don't make any money.
Mm,
Yeah, recalls and stuff like that for big corporations is bad. It is like
yeah,
billions lost.
yeah. And as I say, there are normal people who aren't getting six-figure salaries every year that are going to lose out on food for their children and lose their homes, etc. So, I like the way this film starts off in that, yeah, you may have a greedy CEO who doesn't give a shit about what happened or what allegedly happened, and they're going to just airbrush the whole idea of what happened in the first one. And of course, he comes to regret that. because, and there's a brilliant scene where he's in his office late at night, and a lot of the toys start coming to life in different ways. You've got toy cars and stuff that are freaking him out and making noise. And then, of course, Chucky's back, and he he kills the CEO. And then he goes from that, and he does, and there's this very memorable kill, and it's quite an horrific one where he smothers one of the PAs in the car with a plastic bag. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, it's been a while since I've seen that
Yeah,
movie, but I do
yeah,
remember that.
yeah. And it's like I say, it's quite a disturbing kill. And eventually, he finds his way back into Andy Barclay's life. And
That
of
kill
course,
reminds me of, so me and Steve Merlo from, Sawyer Massacre,
mm,
director, we did a, watch and review, on his channel when I was a guest on his show for the last broadcast, and, at the end of that movie, there is a smothering slash strangulation, which very much was in line with that one that you're talking about from Child's Play
mm,
2, where it was very visceral and violent and primal, and you could feel the malice in
mm,
that kill very
mm.
much.
But this is memorable, and it it just there's a few memorable kills in this movie. There really is, and we'll get to those. But he comes back to Barclay's life, and of course, there's two dolls. One is called Tommy, and apparently Tommy was a bit of a kind of what should we say? A bit of
Knockoff.
an FU to the original director Tom Holland, whom
Oh yeah,
Andy,
yeah.
who Don Mancini didn't get along with. But like I say, on the same token, their creative differences made this brilliant film. So Tommy is just a doll, and of course Chucky takes over and beats the shit out of him, and then buries him in the back garden. And it's brilliant because he's using these childhood toys to kill him. He even buries him with his small little red spade in the back garden.
See, you like that, but when I watch it, I'm like, why is he burying this inanimate doll? And then when you brought up about the whole Don Mancini thing and with Tom Holland, I'm like, okay, I get it. He's burying Tom Holland, so to speak, and
Yeah,
it's a metaphor, and now I
yeah,
get
yeah. Apparently, that's the story that Don Mancini did that, more or less to kind of, you know, metaphorically say that, Tom Holland, I don't like you. Hence calling the doll Tommy, and burying, getting Chucky to bury him in the backyard. But nevertheless, it's a brilliant film, and everyone will remember the school scene where Chucky goes to Andy's school, and he is he's doing a little exam for school, and of course Chucky defaces his exam by writing "fuck you, bitch," and
it.
he then just there's this powerful scene where he comes out of the closet with this yardstick, and he's so menacing with it, and he just beats her to death with it, and
Yeah, he beats her to death with a fucking yardstick of all things.
yeah, yeah, and it's it's fantastic because it's just so brilliantly done for a puppet or an animatronic or whatever you want to call it, and everyone talks about how it's the expressions on his face when he comes out of that closet and then beats her. that is just brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And then you cut back to the foster home where he befriends the older foster child, Kyle, and he has his first smoke with her, if you remember, Andy Barkley, which he's still only a kid, but she's seen as somewhat of a bad influence, but she's going to help him out throughout. And then you've got the dad, Phil, and I think anyone watching that movie just wants Dad Phil killed ASAP. They want him killed, and that brilliant scene where he goes down to the basement and he falls in a way because Chucky trips him with something and he's hanging upside down. And, he just goes, "How's it hanging, Phil?" With the, and it's just brilliantly delivered from Brad Dourif. And he's off. And you go on then to the finale where the third act, being the toy factory, which is just outstanding. And there's that other awful kill where that guy is on the conveyor belt and he has the eyes implanted into his head. There's just so much to, for gore hounds to feast on this film
Yeah,
and
they
really, really
definitely
enjoy.
cranked it up for this film. That's for damn sure. The
Oh yeah,
gore, the effects for the kills. They had the budget now compared to the first film.
they they did. Now, strangely, whilst it's the most liked from all of the fans, it's Rotten Tomatoes rating. If we want to go by Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 40%, which
Yeah,
I can't understand because I thought it would get better than that. But then again, there are some real cult classics out there that Rotten Tomatoes have given poor ratings to, and
my view on Rotten Tomatoes is they're not credible at all, in my opinion. They're basically owned by movie studios, and indie films are never going to do well with them for the most part. Depends on how deep your pockets are. Uh,
and yet you have a film that I want to see this weekend. I'm sure every horror fan is talking about at the moment, The Black Phone, which has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes at the moment.
yeah, which blows
So
me away that they've given it that.
yeah, and hopefully it will stay that way, and then hopefully it will be a really really good film. So I look forward to that this weekend. But it made 35 million.
Off of a $13
Uh,
million budget.
yeah, so not bad, not bad at all, and so much so that they they knew that the the return was so good, and they knew that the character had gained momentum, and Universal were now at the helm, as it were, as opposed to MGM. That 9 months later, the gestation of a pregnancy, you get Child's Play 3. Yeah. Now,
Well,
some people,
if you
yeah,
don't mind to go back to Child's Play 2, I did want to say this one was, I think it might have been the only one that actually got a novelization done on it, and it was done by Matthew J.
all right,
Costello,
I didn't know that.
and
Mm.
it really dives into Andy and Chucky's relationship, but it also more on Chucky growing up with an absent father. His mother was a dwarf, and then it culminates with him actually strangling his mother to death. I have not been able to. I'm sure the novelization's out there somewhere, and I've probably not looked hard enough for it. But
And
as
is it just called Child's Play 2, the novel?
yeah,
Oh, all right, okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. And of course, later on when we talk about the series, we do get a backstory into Charles Lee Ray as well. But there are a lot of people that don't like Child's Play 3. But
I thought
for
the
me,
poster for it was so badass. I love that fucking poster for it. It's just Chucky's face with that little snarl with a little bit of blood coming out the corner of his mouth.
Yeah, and there was that tagline. It was something to the effect of, there comes a time to put away childhood things, but certain things can't be put away. I think it was something to that
But
effect.
some things won't stay put.
Yeah, and it was again didn't get a great rating. It got like 23% on the Rotten Tomatoes. Um, and financially it worked out, I think, about 20 million. But there are some horror fans don't particularly like it. And
I thought it
I
was
would
okay. I like the fact that one of the things on the poster too was "Look who's stalking," because in 1991 there was a Kirstie Alley, John Travolta movie where
look, yeah,
called "Look Who's Talking,"
yeah,
which
yeah,
Bruce Willis was the voice of Mikey. Was it? Was it Mikey the
yeah.
baby? So that was a big thing in '91. So the fact that they used that little tagline at the end, the "Look who's stalking," I always found that. And Child's Play 3, yeah, was it as good as 1 and 2? No, but it wasn't terrible.
It wasn't terrible, and I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. We're in a military school, which is a completely different environment from what we've already seen, via the domestic house in the first one, the foster home in the second one, and now we have a different actor playing Andy Barclay, and he's older, um, and is he's still wise to what um, Chucky was, and he's still mindful of him. And there are some decent kills in this movie that I enjoyed. There's the whole garbage truck scene, which was quite. Uh,
I helped take the cap off my water before I try to drink it.
you're okay, but you remember that garbage truck scene? That was fairly, claustrophobic and horrible.
Well, if we
And
can go back to to the beginning of the film when Chucky is resurrected, I thought that was brilliant. It was his blood being mixed into the plastic when the good guys toy company, I forget the name, Play Pals or something like that,
yeah,
they reopened and they put the good guys dolls back into production, and somehow Charles Lee Ray's blood, Chucky's blood, somehow ends up in the mixture, the plastic mixture.
that's right. You can see that little drip of blood lining across this, because in the end of Child's Play 2, he is just like blown up completely. And then, as you say, the blood, which drips over the plastic, resurrects Chucky. And yeah, that was, I suppose people would see that as a little bit of a cop out, but you have to have the halo effect when you watch movies of all kinds. You have to have the believability, because look, at the end of the day, you're going in to watch a movie about a killer doll, and you don't expect to go to bed that night and think that a killer doll is going to come out of from under your bed at 3 a.m. in the morning and try to stab you to death. So, as I say, the halo effect must be there in
Yeah,
order
'cause
for you to.
some people are like, "Oh, well, it was too much magic." Well, the magic element has been in it since the very beginning. I mean, voodoo is magic.
Yeah,
So that's part of the character. It's always going to be there. That element is always going to be part of it. The whole voodoo thing, that is Tom Holland's lasting thing that's going to run its course with this series,
yeah,
because as much as
yeah,
Don
mm,
Mancini doesn't want to admit or whatever, Tom Holland gave him that.
yeah,
So as
he
much
did.
as they might not like one another, there that is.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
you know,
And the most, I watched this movie probably about a year ago, and it, for me, the most memorable bits in this movie, which isn't bad in fairness. Um, I like the bit where he again. tries to take over another child. So you've got the little African American kid in it who he's trying to manipulate, and he's very naive, and of course every opportunity he gets to do that voodooism on him is interrupted, and Chucky's getting more frustrated and more frustrated. But for me, the final act is hugely memorable. Yeah, I do like that final act because it's I think it was quite clever what they did. Um, the little bastard went away and put real ammunition into all these guns, and he didn't have to kill people at all. He just did it inadvertently, and I thought that was a great piece from this movie. And because you had these young characters who were at odds with each other as well, in that some of them were bullies to each other, and some of them were teaming up with each other to fight the bullies. And then, they have this red team and this blue team which go on this exercise. And one of the teams, has the bully factor in it, and the other has the good guys in it. But if you'll pardon the pun, good guys. But um, on the same token, they don't recognize the real threat that is out there, and that is Chucky, because he has fucked up their shit, and there is going to be some carnage as a result. And and then you have the very end of the movie, which takes place in this temporary amusement park. Mm. And when I was growing up in the 80s in Ireland, we would get those temporary amusement parks. Did you get those in America
Yeah.
growing up? Oh, these traveling amusement parks. Yeah,
We got them all the time.
yeah, yeah. So you have this kind of traveling amusement park, and it's it's a great climax to it where you're in the ghost train. I did really enjoy that. Yeah, and eventually, of course, Chucky meets his demise via some kind of massive fan, um, and he gets torn to shreds. The There's a very sad story attached to this film because when it came out in the early 90s, there was a terrible incident in England.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. The James Bolger and Suzanne Capper incident.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we won't talk about it too much with respect to those people, but they linked Child's Play to it, and the people responsible claimed that Child's Play was their motive almost. Uh, for me personally, as somebody who works professionally um, with human behavior, be it psychiatry and in the study of mental health, and psychology being the study of their behavior. I my opinion, look, and I'm sure there are plenty who would disagree with me, and that's what science is all about. At the end of the day, I have a bachelor of science, and um, we differ. We have different opinions, but my opinion is that you're either bad or you're not. And I mean, I try to do an awful lot of good things for society, and I do a lot of charity fundraisers for people, and I help out in a lot of ways around the community. And I'm known for it, and I'm very proud of the stuff I do. And I watched plenty of horror movies, and it's never influenced me to do anything bad. But back in that time, it just became very taboo, and they were blamed for so many different atrocities, which was a shame. And like I say, you're either bad or you're not. And it doesn't necessarily take a movie to flick that switch in your brain to make you do something bad. I mean, you know as well as I do, John. You're one of the most decent people I know, and you love horror, and
Man, I appreciate that, brother, and same to you.
yeah, and you don't have that kind of mindset, you know.
No, I mean,
So
I go and see I'm not ashamed to admit it. I go and see a shrink every week, every Wednesday. Matter of fact, I got to go see my doc tomorrow.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
go and I have, because I have anxiety issues with
mm,
obsessive compulsive disorder and post traumatic stress.
yeah,
Not ashamed to admit it. It's just part of my life
yeah,
and I have to manage it. But to caveat off of that, yeah, movies don't make psychopaths. People are
yeah,
normally born with that mental condition, and
mm,
you shouldn't shame them and damn them, but at the same time, you should recognize it and get them help because certain mental conditions are like a ticking time bomb.
mm,
And if left untreated, it's bad juju.
yeah. Mm. And I admire you for talking openly about your mental health because I would say to everybody watching that everybody gets anxiety. Um, I get anxiety, and you see, as a mental health professional, people would say, people would think that I am immune to mental health difficulties. Nobody is. You know,
Mm,
we all get anxiety. We get low mood now and again, and um, we're all prone to it. But you know, we're bad people are completely different. You know, and I don't for one second want to condone any of the terrible atrocities that have happened in America over the years and decades, Columbine and all these other ones
Well,
where
I've met a one of the Columbine survivors, and we're eventually going to have her on the podcast. Maybe we can have you join too, because I think it would be something good where you could talk to her as well. Um,
I'd love that. I
and
would.
I
Yeah,
know we're straying a little bit, but it's important.
yeah,
I went back and
but
I read the journals on Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris. Those were the
yeah,
two assholes that did all of the
yeah,
evil.
yeah.
And the one thing that it all seemed to boil down to with me was the parents were too hands off on them. And there was clear issues with both of them boys. And nobody took notice of it
And I think
until
they
it
were
was too
trying.
late.
I think they were trying to blame the Matrix when that happened
Yeah,
because
they did, but at the same time, they were influenced by that movie Natural Born Killers that Oliver Stone did. Because when you read their journal, everything is called NBK. That's what their whole operation was called, was NBK. I'll have to send you the PDF that I got
yeah.
of that journal. It's pretty.
No, we're not necessarily digressing here because we're talking about the influence of movie violence on people in general. And there is a very famous French philosopher called René Girard, and he will talk about what's called the scapegoat mechanism. And the scapegoat mechanism is when something goes wrong, somebody has to be, or something has to be blamed.
Yep.
So, COVID, people would have blamed the government. They might have blamed China. Um, Rene Girard would say that if you're in a lynch mob, you don't know you're actually in a lynch mob. So to blame movies for this kind of violence is a scapegoat mechanism, and it's not accurate in my opinion. Um,
Well, the
and
same goes for music as well. I'm a kid of the 80s and I'm a heavy
mm,
metal fan. I love British heavy metal. I love one of like Brandon knows one of my all-time favorite bands, like one of my top 5 favorite bands is a little Irish band by the name, not U2, but Thin Lizzy. Phil
yeah,
Lynott and the guys. I love that fucking band.
yeah,
And it influenced me to become a guitar player. I'm not
yeah,
that great, but I can strum. But God knows the witch hunts that went on in the 80s. Every time something bad happened or somebody committed suicide, next thing you know, you'd have D. Snyder sitting in a courtroom trying to explain that music is not making people kill themselves, and then you had Judas Priest doing the same thing, and AC/DC, and all these other groups having to defend themselves because they are artists expressing themselves artistically, but because somebody had an undiagnosed mental condition, somehow that music is what made him off himself or
Yeah,
commit some other atrocity.
and that is again the scapegoat mechanism. It is. So Child's Play 3, um, I might get shot down for this, you know. I think it was just an excuse to say that it was responsible or that it played a role in this terrible thing that happened in England. Um, of course, it's shocking, it's very sad, but it actually it took Chucky off of the radar for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
It did. And on the same token, you see what doesn't make sense is whilst Child's Play went on hiatus because it was blamed for these things, other horror movies were being made simultaneously.
Yeah.
So
Horror
what
wasn't as prevalent in the 90s, but Jesus Christ, I mean, it wasn't long after, well, what, 5 years after Child's Play 3, we got Scream about
yeah,
two high school kids that went crazy and started killing their classmates.
Scream
I
re
know
it,
what you did
it
last summer.
yes. Scream did reinvent the horror genre though. It did in a big way. And it was again something we will cover someday. I've done it with the Dos Incredibles boys. When the last Scream movie came out, we covered every one of the Scream movies on the Dos Incredibles podcast. And to be fair, there isn't a bad movie amongst any one of them. You know,
I
like
have
there's one or two that aren't amazing, but most of them are absolutely brilliant, including the new one.
I have got to introduce you to my beautiful, beautiful friend Nancy Ritter, who played in Scream. Uh,
Oh,
I
yeah,
have had the absolute pleasure to be able to say that I am friends with her because she is a beautiful person. I mean, beautiful woman, but just a beautiful soul. She was the one that played the girl in the bathroom, and I know it was like a little short cameo, but that scene of the cheerleader and that other girl, which Nancy played, unnamed character, that's why she refers to her as the girl in the bathroom. That scene was very impactful because it added so much to the plot.
yeah. I've heard of her. Yeah, I have. I think I added her on Instagram recently. So
I'm
yeah,
trying to get her
yeah.
back on the show, so
Do I'd like to talk to her. Yeah,
I'm gonna
definitely.
go ahead and warn you. She curses like a sailor. So
she, she, she's worse than me. So yeah. Our next film uh comes in 1998, and it's Bride of Chucky, and it it's
I
directed by
think it's
Ron Hughes. Yeah.
I think it's the best of all of them, neck and neck with the first one. And the reason why is because of just Jennifer Tilly, her chemistry with Brad Dorff. That that whole thing, man, it worked to a T.
There's a brilliant prologue to that film where she pays off the cop to go into the evidence locker to get Chucky's effects, and you see Jason Voorhees' mask inside there, and you see Michael Myers, and I think you might even see Leatherface's chainsaw inside there too, you know. And that's a great prologue. And Jennifer Tilly, in fairness, she she becomes part of the Child's Play family in a very, very brilliant way, playing Tiffany. And her doll even becomes iconic after this, which is great.
Yeah, the doll
And
becomes a sex symbol to the point where there's cosplayers that dress up like the doll. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. and that's really cool, you know. Um, it it does take the comic route, and that didn't go down too well with people. Um, but on the same token, it's quite a good film. It is, and
I
you know,
like
it's
the scene of Jennifer Tilly's boyfriend, the goth boyfriend, the kind of snarky guy that was talking shit to the doll. Remember the long
yeah,
haired guy?
yeah.
And she
He picked,
sets the doll on his chest, and they're clearly getting ready to engage in adult time.
yeah,
And he goes, "Well, I'm sure this doll can't satisfy you, baby, or something." And the scene, Chucky turns his head slowly around backwards,
yeah.
almost like an homage to Reagan from The Exorcist.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
And
I
that
was just
that
gonna
was
say
an
that.
awesome scene.
Yeah, that's definitely an homage to Exorcist, where the head turns right around. And I think there might have been a clip prior to that happening where he picked up the doll and he did some simulated sex act on the
Yeah, he
doll.
did when she brought it home.
Really, really human. And you know when he did that, it's like you're gonna get fucking killed, bitch. You know, because you don't do that. Um, and he's one of those characters who you just want to see getting offed because no, he's a pretend psychopath when in actual fact he's just a normal kind of a geek, and he pretends to be what he is to impress Tiffany. And there's
Yeah,
some brilliant visuals in it.
because Tiffany has this, I call it the Harley Quinn syndrome, like in Batman. Harley Quinn's attracted to Joker not because he's good looking, but because he's dangerous.
Yeah.
And Tiffany is a closet, basically a closet homicidal maniac slash serial killer, but she's she's attracted to these types of people.
Mhm. And one thing about Jennifer Tilly is a bit like Brad Dourif. She has this incredible voice. She has a
Very
brilliant
unique.
voice. Yeah, she has. She's almost like the female version of Alec Baldwin in that she has this huskiness to her voice, which is excellent, and it's fantastic. So she was perfect for the role. And there's, I suppose, one of the most memorable lines in the movie is when the two of them get down to business and are about to get doll coitus, and she says, "Did you bring a rubber?" And he says, "Look at me, I'm all made of rubber." That's quite funny. And then you have your subplot where you've got John Ritter, the late great John Ritter,
Jack
who
Tripper, baby.
yeah, he's playing the sheriff, and his daughter is dating the bad boy, and you've got those two characters who are almost, they're the the yin to the yang of Tiffany and Chucky, because throughout all these murders are happening on this road trip, and they're being blamed for it because there's no way two dolls are responsible for all this carnage. And there is some real horrible carnage in it, like that broken mirror scene, the mirror on the ceiling where the two of them smash it, and it falls down on that couple. That's fairly gruesome. And the way he turns John Ritter's character into what looks like Hellraiser, giving him about a score, if not two scores, of nails in his head. That's fairly gruesome. And
Was this movie the only horror movie that John Ritter ever did? I think it might have been because he only used to do like comedies and kind of serious stuff. I think this might have been the only horror that he ever really got or that he really played in as far as a part. I'm
quite
not
possibly,
sure.
I mean, I remember John Ritter for
Three's Company,
Um,
Problem Child. What else?
there's, there's a great movie from John Ritter called Stay Tuned.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like that. And that was one of my favorites in the 90s growing up. And I rewatched that again quite recently, and I do still enjoy it. And Eugene Levy is in it, and Jeffrey Jones, and it's a great film. You know, I know it's probably got something like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes or something, but to me, it's a bit of a cult classic. I like that. You know, there's some
John,
fun parodies in it.
as a kid, Three's Company, I even watched that when they put it in the syndication. That I still, even if I can catch it on TV today, I still watch it. Just that song, "Come and Knock on a Door, Come and Knock on a Door."
It, I'm aware of it because it was actually parodied in Stay Tuned, but it, it wasn't such a big hit over here. Yeah, in the 80s, we grew up with things like The Cosby Show and another few things, Alf, and a lot of 80s shows like The Fall Guy and The A-Team, etc. But Three's Company never really landed in Ireland. You know, Dallas and Dynasty and Falcon Crest and all those other ones did, but Three's Company not so.
Well,
Uh,
Three's Company, I think, was a knockoff of a British show that was on BBC. I'm not sure. Maybe any of you viewers out there can correct me on that, but I think Three's Company was a knockoff, and that might be why it wasn't popular in UK and Ireland because of that fact.
Possibly. I don't know a whole pile about it, because I can't say that I've ever watched an episode of it, but I've certainly watched a plethora of different episodes of 80s American shows that were very popular. Um, like I say, the A-Team, The Fall Guys, Simon and Simon, and Heart to Heart, and all those other ones. But no, Three's Company just didn't land with us for some reason. But
The
yeah,
Bride of
he's
Chucky
probably
thing, the Bride of Chucky thing. To get back onto that,
the.
when I really said, I've just had an epiphany. I don't know. I was sitting here thinking, I was like, natural born killers, because I mentioned that about the whole Columbine thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, I've seen that movie, and then that came out in 95. This came out in 98. And I was like, you know what? Bride of Chucky is essentially natural born killers with dolls.
It it could be. Yeah. Um, I have to admit that I've seen Natural Born Killers probably once, maybe twice. Not a huge fan of it.
Yeah, you couldn't show
Um,
it today. You would have cancel culture up the ass off of that movie. That
yeah,
movie is woo, yeah.
yeah. I know it was Oliver Stone and it was like Woody Harrelson and was it Jennifer
Juliette Lewis.
Juliet Lewis? Yes, Juliet Lewis and Robert Downey Jr. And even Rodney Dangerfield was in there.
Oh
But
God, Rodney Dangerfield. For anybody that's not seen that movie, I love Rodney. Rodney's like one of the Mount Rushmore comedians, but he plays this sleazy,
yeah,
just racist, nasty motherfucker in this movie.
yeah.
I mean, and he done it well. I was like, holy crap, Rodney.
He did from what I remember.
I was
And
like,
you
damn,
know,
Rodney's got me where I hate him. Like I
yeah.
literally hated his character in that movie.
Because I loved Back to School and the other bits and pieces I saw of
Easy
Rodney
money,
Dangerfield, you know.
easy money.
No respect. No respect at all, you know. But um yeah, Bride of Chucky ends with the the graveyard scene, which, you know, is quite obviously done on a set somewhere. And it has this kind of standoff between Tiffany and Chucky, whereby they're fighting with each other, and then at the end, she gives birth to something. But the problem is that we lead up 6 years later to one of the worst films in the franchise.
Yeah, I was going to say this might be the biggest pile of turd out of all of them. I hated this
Yeah.
goddamn movie. I haven't
and
even
and
watched it all the way through, to be honest, to anybody out there. And like I was telling Brandon before we started, this movie and was it Cult of Chucky at the end? I've not seen neither because it was this movie right here. I watched maybe 30 minutes of it and I was like, fuck this. I'm done. I'm out later. Deuces. And now I know nothing about this or the next movie to come.
well, I did watch all of Seed of Chucky, and there's no continuity in it because the child that or whatever she gives birth to in the graveyard is not what we see in Seed of Chucky. Yeah. And for anyone who has seen Seed of Chucky and enjoyed it, and I'm sure there are people who have enjoyed it. I'm not one of them, and a lot of people don't like it, and they do rank it as the worst in the franchise. It's actually Billy Boyd who plays Pippin in Lord of the Rings, voices Glenn or Glenda.
Yeah,
Because
Glenn, the son of Chucky, and
yeah, now I
yeah,
mean um, Dan Mancini is a gay man, and in fairness to him, I suppose he probably has some influence in wanting to make this character. There was good intentions there
yeah,
for
it
the time
was.
because you had this transgender character played by Billy Boyd, and he was the complete opposite to his parents in it. Because Chucky was telling him, this runs in the family, murder and all that, but it actually became a parody of itself.
That's where it lost me. It became
Yeah,
like Batman 1966 with blood and gore. It was too campy for me.
yeah,
And yeah, I get the message that he was trying to convey with the whole Glenn thing, Glenn becoming Glenda.
yeah.
And
Which is probably a homage to Ed Wood,
yeah,
that famous movie Glen or Glenda. Yeah,
and then the whole Tiffany dressing Glenn up with makeup and teaching him how to, all that kind of stuff.
mm.
But that wasn't the problem. The problem with me was the overuse of all this comedy shit. It's what got me.
Yeah, and the attempt to make it meta didn't work because you had Jennifer Tilly playing herself, and you had Jennifer Tilly playing Tiffany, and you had Redman in it for some reason. Redman was your movie director, and he was going to cast Jennifer Tilly in a movie about the Virgin Mary, and it just verged on the ridiculous. It really did. There's a quite a good opening scene to it where you have again a POV shot of a doll murdering a family, but it's actually a dream that he has several names in this film. He's called Glenn, Glenda, and he's also referred to as Shitface, I think.
Yeah,
But
I think
you
so.
know, yeah. But no, it's for the horror fans. They didn't like it, and I didn't like it. So
I
I
put
think
it
that
in the same category as scary movie. That's where I put it.
yeah, it did take that journey whereby nobody was going to take it seriously, and we don't want that. And then to make up for it, um, because it had disappointed people so much, is that was 2004, and we have a very long wait, a very very long wait until we get Curse of Chucky, which is return to form really, and it's
And it's the debut of
2013.
Brad Dourif's daughter, Fiona Dourif, as Nika Pierce.
Yeah. Now, I think a lot of people, when they heard Fiona Dorff was joining this franchise, they thought nepotism, you know, but no, she really knocked it out of the park. I'm going to come back to her in a little while as well when we talk about the TV series, because there's just something very brilliant that she did in the
Well, do you
TV
want to do
franchise.
this as a two-parter, and we'll do the part two as the TV series, because there's a lot to cover in that, because
Yeah,
that's
so,
like,
so, so
that,
Curse and Cult, we'll do Curse and Cult together. Um, they got very high ratings, even though, like, there was 76% in Rotten Tomatoes for Curse, and it was 80% for Cult. But yet, ironically, fans didn't like them so much. Yeah, it was the introduction of Fiona Dorff, and she was very good, and she was this character who, again, the doll was given to her, and it also brought back Alex Vincent into the franchise as well. But the first one is very kind of Hitchcock style in the house, and the second one is in the I'm not sure what the Americans call mental health facilities, but I think it may have been referred to. It's a while now since I've seen Cult of Chucky, but I think they may have referred to it as a sanatorium.
yeah, we still
And
call them sanatoriums in the States.
do we?
For the most, I mean, it's kind of an old word that's not as used quite as much, but it's still thrown around. I mean, we still have places that are called sanatoriums.
Yeah. In Ireland, and obviously someone who works in mental health, um, sanatorium would be a kind of a derogatory term, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm referencing is like old buildings that are not used anymore, but they still have historical significance, and they're still upkept and different things, and they do tours at them, so they're still referred to as the sanatorium. Like Waverly Hills Sanatorium is still very much a tourist attraction that people go to.
Mhm. But even referring to patients is not, it's frowned upon. And when I have students come, I say to them, don't say service users, don't say patients, don't say clients. And they say, well, what do we say? And I say people,
Because that's what they
because
are.
that's what they are, you know? Um, and, you can say people who use our services, because we are trying, you can't even, and I'm not saying it's political correctness in a world gone mad, because you can't even say mad anymore. But you would say mental health even as opposed to psychiatry. Yeah. So, I mean, the building I work in is literally called the Center for Mental Health Care and Recovery. It's not called a psychiatric unit. But on the same token, um, most of the deliveries that are sent to us are still addressed to, psychiatric unit.
Yeah, when
Whereas
you look at my mental health records, none of my records say patient Evans. It all says Mr. Evans. It refers to me as a person, not a thing.
yeah, so it's something that we're trying to dissolve and get rid of, and become more open about mental health, so we can erase the stigma that is attached to mental health issues. And thankfully, we're getting there. We're
Yeah,
getting there
because what,
slowly.
60 years ago, me with my condition, I would have been shunned if I'd have
Mm,
came out and told people that I have obsessive compulsive disorder and blah blah. Because used to, I mean, and it still is to an extent. When you come out and say obsessive compulsive disorder, some people are like, "Isn't that like really bad?" I don't have an extreme case. I just like everything to be neat and tidy, and I have a
mm.
bad habit of everything has to be squared and sit in its own little space. And if it isn't, it kind of makes me irritated. So I have a mild case of obsessive compulsive disorder.
But Americans, like when I was growing up in the 80s, Americans would have always referred to visiting, in TV shows and movies, visiting their therapist and all that. And today in Ireland, we still have, and it's a small country. I mean, we have about 5 million people living in this country, and it's still there is a stigma attached to it, which is unfortunate. You know, I know we're digressing somewhat, but um, the as we say, the Curse of Chucky starts with Fiona Dorff being it's almost a bit like the original, whereby Karen Bartley Karen Bartley is introduced to the doll, and the doll is going around killing people in Chucky, and she then is committed to a sanatorium because she's claiming the doll did it. And then you have all this mayhem ensuing in the sequel, the Cult of Chucky. And it didn't please horror fans because you had this situation whereby Chucky he was able to do his voodooism far too easily. And you had a number of different dolls in the Cult of Chucky, which just didn't appeal to people. But Fiona Dorff was the standout in it. She really was, and it was impressive to think that you had this brand new character who was introduced to the franchise. And yeah, she is the daughter of uh, Brad Dourif. And as we're speaking about Fiona and Brad Dourif, my friend and co-star in the movie The Third Channel, Heather Beck, Heather told me recently that she was at a con and that she met um, Brad Dourif and Fiona Dourif, and she got her photographs taken with them, etc. And she said that they were really decent people. They were definitely like last week we were talking about Keanu Reeves, who doesn't see himself as a celebrity, and you had these two actors who were very normal and forthcoming with their fans, which is great. And it's great to hear that. Sometimes when you meet your heroes, they can let you down. But it's great to hear that Brad Dourif and Fiona Dourif are apparently very nice people and very grateful to their fans.
What I love
Speaking,
about it is, some actors, they'll be like, ugh, I've been playing this character for so long, I'm getting typecast into it.
mm,
And me, I have a different perspective on it, and it seems to me that Brad and does that have the same perspective I do. Hey, if you still being able to pay your bills and get that meal ticket, or keep riding that meal ticket, because if you can keep affording your houses and your cars and keeping a roof over your head and food on your table and all that, playing that character, then screw it. I'm gonna ride that thing until the wheels fall off it.
yeah, there's a very famous TV series from Ireland. It's a very famous sitcom, which, if any of you Americans haven't seen it, please do watch it. It's called Father Ted. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, I have never seen it, but heard of it.
Father Ted is one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. And there was an episode in it where um, there was this very boring character played by an actor called Michael Redmond. And he was one of these people who would outstay his welcome when he went to visit Father Ted on Craigie Island. And he would just sit there on the couch and say nothing. And there would be these awkward silences. And the point I'm getting to is that his catchphrase in it, whenever he was asked, did he want a cup of tea, or did he want this, or did he want that, he would just say, I'm fine. You know, he was very monotone in it. But I was listening to a podcast recently whereby he said that after the show, so many people came up to him at a comedy festival in Kilkenny in Ireland, and they kept asking him to say the line to the point where he just got so sick and tired of it. And he said he regrets it now, but he felt that he was very rude to these people because he just got overwhelmed with it, you know. And I can understand that. I can understand that, you know, when you become popular for something, you are going to be overwhelmed and inundated with fans, and they are going to probably piss you off when you're probably just trying to have a meal in a restaurant and somebody says, "Oh my God, that's so and so." I mean, Bill Murray is in Ireland at the moment, and he is going around. He was in Limerick yesterday, which is in the southern province of Ireland, and he is going around and he's just being part of the furniture with people. There was a video on Twitter I watched last night where he's in a pub and he is singing "The Star of the County Down" with all these pub goers, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's Bill Murray from uh, Ghostbusters, etc." You know, and
It's
they're just overwhelmed by the hugeness of this actor because he's legendary. And of course, to be fair, Bill Murray's history um, is there is difficulties there. Like it's very sad to hear that he had a falling out with
Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis when they made Groundhog Day.
But they did reconcile before Ramis passed. They
They
did.
did reconcile, and
Yes.
it's a very sad story about how they reconciled before he passed because
It was
he
at a
got,
point where Harold Ramis couldn't even speak anymore
yeah,
because of
yeah,
his condition.
yeah. And look, people fall out all the time, um, and people should endeavor to get along with each other. And it's like what people say in a marriage, you know, never go to bed on an argument. So I think arguments need to be settled face to face, and people should never have arguments online, and written words can be misconstrued. So I think if people have grievances, they should talk to one another in person, and they should never write them down, you know, in messages. But no, it's very sad what happened between Bill Murray and Harold Ramis. But despite his notoriety back filming Groundhog Day, um, it's nice to think that he reconciled with Harold Ramis, but unfortunately, he Harold Ramis had some terrible vascular issues before he died, and sadly, you know, he couldn't even talk to Bill Murray.
Well,
Yeah,
here's
so,
the thing. The silver lining to it all is when anybody wants to go and research Bill Murray. Bill Murray, brilliant actor, brilliant comedian, one of the greatest of all time. I
mm,
mean, you could put goat status on him easily. He's
oh,
definitely one of my favorite comedic actors.
mm,
Ghostbusters. I am a huge Ghostbusters fan, and you could not have Ghostbusters without Peter Venkman.
yeah,
But there was a time when Bill Murray was legendary for being an asshole.
mm,
I mean, if it's a duck, it quacks, it flies, whatever, it swims, it's a duck, right?
yeah,
Well, Bill Murray was legendary for being an asshole. He used to get in fist fights with people on the set of Saturday Night Live. Most famous, Chevy Chase, which Chevy Chase, to be fair, was kind of an asshole back then too.
but
Um,
Chevy Chase still has not shaken that. You know, he hasn't shaken the fact that people remember him as an asshole as well. But on the same token, I love his work. You know, I love Fletch. I love Vacation. I love a lot of the work that he done. Even the poorly received Memoirs of an Invisible Man with John Carpenter. I love that movie. And I do like Chevy Chase, but to this day, people unfortunately remember him as an asshole. And he did say apparently some terrible things to people on the set of Saturday Night Live, which was unfortunate. But you know what?
Well, here's the
People can.
thing, man.
Mm,
When you give people power and popularity and anything like that, we're all flawed.
yeah,
And we're all maybe I would be guilty of it. Maybe all of us would at some degree. When you get that kind of stroke, there's going to be an ego involved. There is
yeah,
most definitely going to be an ego involved.
yeah. Well, there's good egos and bad egos, you know, and I would try to be a modest person, and I would endeavor to have somewhat of a good ego, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be who I am, because I wouldn't have much faith in what I do. And I need to have that ego to, I need to have an ego to sit here today and talk to you, because I need to have confidence to be able to sit and talk live with you as you do
Yeah,
about what we love.
and see
Because if
what
we didn't,
a
if we
lot of
didn't have
people
that confidence, yeah,
what a lot of people don't know about John. You probably wouldn't know it by listening at me now, but I used to be terrified to talk to people
mm,
that I didn't know. Like when and 2 years ago when I started this whole podcast, man, if I could dig up the original file for the original episode, I was just it was like listening to fucking Beavis and Butthead. I
yeah,
was just nervous. I didn't know what to talk about. I was not comfortable. Now I don't give a shit. I'll talk to whoever. It don't make a
yeah,
damn to me.
yeah. Yeah. And it's very important. Talking to each other is very important. Yeah. But no, I'm delighted to hear that Brad Dorff and Fiona Dorff were modest and kind people. And I remember being at a festival in just over the road from where I live a number of years ago, and I met very, very well known comedian who would have done a lot of American movies like Night at the Museum and
Ben
that
Stiller.
movie. No, Steve Coogan.
Oh,
Uh, he was in the movie with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell called The Other Guys.
yeah. I
Yeah,
love that fucking movie.
yeah. So he's the English guy in that, and I met him, and I also met the director of Dangerous Liaisons and The Queen, Stephen Frears, and I was outside smoking cigarettes with them, like and they were just really down to earth, cool people, and we were in a brilliant, relaxed atmosphere. So no, I'm delighted that Brad Dorff and Fiona Dorff, as Heather Beck was telling me, are just really down to earth people, and that's great because, as you said, they rely on people to be their fans, and without their fans, they're nothing. They're
Here's
nothing.
what I've noticed with horror people, horror
Mm,
directors, horror actors, anybody just associated with the horror genre. Now, there are a few bad apples here and there, and that's in every basket, right? There's always a
mm,
bad apple. But I have never seen a genre where for the vast majority of the people that are associated with it are mostly just good fucking people. They're just down to earth and human in every way. They don't act or pretend that they put themselves up on this pedestal. And I've never had a bad experience with anybody from the horror
mm,
genre.
yeah,
I haven't. Maybe I will, unfortunately, someday, but currently, no, I haven't.
that's good to hear. But I don't think I've ever met any of my horror heroes at all. Um, I certainly haven't met George Romero. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us. I'd love to have met him. I have never met John Carpenter. Uh, but from what I see of John Carpenter, and I love his work, he comes across as somebody who gets a bit ticked off with his fans, I think. So I could be wrong in saying that, you know. I hope I am wrong, but
I I don't think it's so much that he gets ticked off. I think John Carpenter is at the age that he is now,
mm,
maybe.
maybe he's become a grumpy old man.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say getting a little bit of that curmudgeonitis a little bit. He's getting a
yeah,
little.
yeah. And maybe, like, to be fair, if you go back to 1978 when he made Halloween, he didn't want to make a sequel to it, and the studios came on board and they were like, you have to, and it was very rushed, and some people hate it, some people absolutely love it, and he didn't want to direct it, and Rick Rosenthal came along and directed it, and I like it. Again, because I remember watching it in the 80s, and I absolutely loved it. And then of course, the Season of the Witch brought in Tommy Lee Wallace, and John Carpenter never directed a Halloween movie after that at all
I think
until
that's
he.
where I think that's where you hit the nail on the head. I think his biggest problem is people only know him for that. And when you look
Yeah.
at his work as a whole, he is so much more. They Live, Vampires, Prince of Darkness, The Fog, The Thing, Christine. I mean, Memoirs of the Invisible Man. I mean, on and on and on. There's more
we
to him than Halloween.
we must do a show on him someday. I know that Big Daddy Wolf from Sundown Radio wants us to do something on the Universal monsters, and we will. I promise you, we will get around to doing that. I promise you that.
Yes,
Yeah,
Charles, we will. Mr.
yeah,
Green, we'll get to it.
we'll get to that. Don't worry. And um, so, but to conclude with the franchise, uh, we're going to talk about the TV series, which
Which
came out last
is
last.
fucking the tits, as I've heard my son say.
I worried about this, right? Because I really did enjoy Ash versus Evil Dead. I thought it was brilliant.
I
And
did until the third season. I thought it stayed around a little too long. I thought it should have ended after the second season. That's just my personal opinion.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it did become a little bit confusing, all right, in the third season, and hard to follow. And I thought that when the new series, which is just simply titled Chucky, was coming around, and again, the Sci-Fi Channel can be hit and miss. Um, I thought, oh God, they're going to ruin it. But my fuck, they did not. No, they
I want
made
I want to
an
give a shout out to these four individuals: Zachary Arthur, who plays Jake Wheeler, the main character; Bajorvin Arneson, who plays Devin Evans, my namesake; Olivia Allen Lean, and Theo, I'm probably going to mess this up, Briones as Junior. And Olivia plays Lexi.
yeah,
Those four kids.
yeah,
I don't know if you will ever come across this video, but if you do, I want you four to know this. You all got a long and great career waiting for you.
yeah. They were fucking brilliant. They were really fucking good. And some people will kill me for this. I'm not a huge Stranger Things fan. I I still have, I think, what are we on now? Season four. I think I have half of season three watched, and I haven't watched it for about a year. And in actual fact, the thing I'm most looking forward to in the next week or so is the Umbrella Academy, which Netflix are bringing back for a third season. I fucking loved the first two series of that,
Yeah, it's
but
like a fucked up X-Men. That's what I like about it.
it's brilliant. I loved season two where they were back in 1963. I thought it was fucking fantastic. But the Chucky TV series brought back the Child's Play 2 version of Chucky. And by fuck did they do a great job, you know? And they also included all these brilliant legacy characters. Alex Vincent came back into it. Jennifer Tilly, Fiona Dorff came back into it. That woman, I can't think of her name. I'm sorry, that plays Kyle in Child's Play 2. She came back into it, and
Christine Elise.
Christine Elise. Okay, and the premise before anyone had seen any footage of this TV series was that it was going to be set in a town where the doll was going to expose the hypocrisies of the town itself. Mm. And ironically, the actor who plays the doctor, the psychiatrist in Cult of Chucky, plays a completely different character. In he plays Lexi's father in this series, and it and then Devon Sawa from Final Destination plays two characters. And ironically, Devon Sawa is set to return for series two. In what shape or form, I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to wait and see. But he plays two twin brothers who are polar opposites to each other. One being the alcoholic father of the main character. And another thing that this series does,
Now, yeah,
and
now I was sitting there the whole time going, I've seen the father and the brother, his brother
yeah,
somewhere.
Final Destination.
Yeah, and I'm sitting
Yeah,
there, okay, yeah, Devin fucking Sawa. Yeah.
yeah, Devon Sawa. And what I think was wonderfully done with this series, and people were talking about Lightyear last week, saying that, and I just it disgusts me in 2022 to think that Lightyear has been banned in several countries because
Why?
of same sex relationship in it. And
I
it's
thought we had gotten to
2020,
a I thought we had gotten to a point in the world where, we let that go.
but
It's
the Multiverse of Madness was, I won't say cancelled, but it was banned or whatever the case may be in certain overly conservative countries because America Chavez was gay. And I mean, fuck's sake, lads, get a life.
Hey, look, I'm friends with a lot of gay people. I have gay family members. Guess
As
what?
well.
They're
Yeah. Of
fucking people too.
course they're fucking people. Get a fucking life. But I just thought fucking hats off to Don Mancini as a gay man who is going to make his central characters gay. And there's a new movie coming out, by the way, which is a gay romantic comedy called Bros, and the trailer for it is very funny. It has Billy Eichner in it, and I'm going to go to the cinema and watch that film. If the ratings are good for it, I watch it because we need that. We need to break fucking boundaries and barriers about homosexuality and say, grow up, people, for fuck's sake. Like, this is reality. And too many gay people are taking their lives because they are ashamed of their sexuality. And that should never be the case because this is as old as time. So, no, I just thought very clever that your main character is it exposed, it has the fact that he's gay. He
He's
is
still in the closet, so to speak, as the kids say.
Yeah, he is because he's young and he knows he's going to get some slack for his sexuality, and he has a fascination with dolls, and of course he picks up Chucky at a yard sale, and his father is an alcoholic bigot, and he humiliates him, and you've got Chucky, who basically takes out his retribution on bigotry because one of his first victims in it is the Devon Sawa character who plays the alcoholic dad, and he
Yeah,
electrocutes him.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, flash fry, baby.
Yeah. And there's a terrible moment at the costume party later on where, Lexi dresses up as uh, the
The
dad,
dad.
and that's fucked up. It
I
really
will
is.
say about all those characters, out of all of them,
Mm,
and I'm not saying any are better than the other, but Olivia Lean as Lexi Cross, the whole this young lady is fucking like beyond her years talented, because she goes from this character that you are just hoping Chucky will freaking kill, and then you start caring about her.
yeah,
You know how hard that is to pull off?
yeah. She's almost like the Walter White character in Breaking Bad, in that the personality shifts in its stratification, and she redeems herself later on by becoming um, the hero with the rest of the kids in battling Chucky. But he's that I fucking love that scene where he's in the hospital, and Lexi's sister, who I think has some type of autism, is fairly obsessed with the doll. And Chucky is sitting there, and at the end of one episode, he's all fucked up and burned in the face, and he just does this to the kids at the end. I think it's fucking brilliant. He's he's just that one subtle move, was fucking brilliant. I really, really enjoyed that. And the the Fiona Dorff character comes back into it, and Jennifer Tilly's character, and Alex Vincent, and all these people. And I suppose we won't spoil it too much, because there may be people who haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it either,
Yeah,
but I will
because
say this. I want y'all to pay attention to Fiona Dorff, because she plays a younger version of her father. That's all I'm going to give you. She
yeah,
does play a younger version of her father,
yes,
and
yep,
like Babe Ruth, she calls her shot, and she knocked that motherfucker out the park. That's all
and
I'm going to give you.
and we won't elaborate on how she plays a younger version of her father, but I will say one thing. I didn't know. I had no fucking idea.
No, I thought it was that deep fake shit that they've been doing with like Star
Yeah,
Wars and stuff.
yeah. It was what I was doing was I was watching breakdown videos of the shows of a channel I do watch quite a lot, and in fairness to him, he's very good. 3C Films. I really enjoy his stuff, Chris. And Chris, I'd say hats off to him, and every good luck to him. He puts on 5 or 6 shows a week. I'd say his whole life is dedicated to making YouTube videos, and he he kind of clicks with me in that he likes a lot of stuff I like. He makes videos about. He loves Michael Myers. He loves Chucky. He loves Sonic the Hedgehog and all that kind of stuff, and all the kind of stuff I like as well. And he does a lot of hard work, but obviously he's doing it full time, whereas I can't because I have a full time job.
Yeah,
But
me either. I got to fix people's cars.
yeah, but look, we're here doing this. But I watched his breakdown videos, and it wasn't until I watched the 3C breakdown of that particular episode where Fiona Dorff did what she did. Spoiler alert, we won't spoil it. That I didn't know. I really didn't, and it was fantastic. So I really do commend the series. I recommend it strongly to all horror fans. As I said, it is less than a year old, so we won't spoil it too much, but it's definitely worth a watch.
and
There
it's out
is.
on physical DVD, Blu-ray, all of that right now, and it's fairly cheap. I got it. It's in the living room, $20.
Mm.
But I still
And
collect physical shit because I like holding the things in my hand because I'm weird. I'm not part of this digital age. I don't know. Something about me is if I buy a movie digitally, I don't really feel like I own it. Where if
mm,
I actually hold it in my hands, it's like mine, and then I keep it
mm.
because I'm
I
weird.
I do I live in the digital age, I have to admit. Even though I picked up a VCR recently that was given to me.
Fuck, I'm
It,
still looking for one because I
I have one. I can ship it to you if you want it. It's been in the trunk of my car for about a month. So if you
I'll pay
want to
you
buy
for it, man. Tell me how much you want for it. I'll pay you for it because
a
I've
just
got shit tons of these and I have no way to watch them.
you send me on your address, John, and I'll send it on to you, and you'll have it ASAP because
I'll pay
I
you
don't
back.
have it.
I'll pay you back for the shipping because it's going to be expensive to ship
Don't
from
worry,
Ireland to
don't
Hawaii.
worry too much about that. I don't have any physical videos. Yeah, but no, definitely, I would say would highly recommend the series. But we've forgotten one thing, and we have to mention this: the Child's Play remake. Yeah. Now,
It
when the
wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It wasn't
it
bad.
wasn't bad. No, the thing about it was when it was pitched, it went back to MGM, and Braun were involved in it as well. And I think I've made notes here somewhere. Um, Braun were involved in it, and the Orion, yeah. So Orion came into it as well. And
Yeah, Don Mancini had no hand in this one at all, did he?
no, but
Other than
I,
he had to get they had to get permission to use the name and likeness, kind of, right? Was that it?
what I will say about this film is that I really enjoyed Aubrey Plaza. I think she's a great actor anyway. I really enjoyed Brian Tyree Henry because I love Atlanta, and I like to see him in movies. And again, he played a gay character in Eternals, which sadly wasn't a great Marvel movie.
Should have been a
And
TV show.
yeah, and certain shit conservative countries slammed it for that, but fuck them. Um, but the thing about the movie, which to me was a great idea and it was hugely ambitious, was who do we get to replicate Brad Dourif? And who do they get? Only one of the greatest voice actors of all. Like, it's amazing that this man has a double life. He is most famously known for Luke Skywalker
Yeah, he's a
and
Jedi Master and the arch villain of Batman.
the arch villain of Batman. And they bring in Mark Hamill to voice Buddy, yeah, or Chucky. Um, and sadly, it's just not utilized enough. His voice is not utilized enough.
Yeah, because the
He-
whole time he talks, I and I love Mark Hamill. I am such a
I
Star
do,
Wars
I
fanboy.
do.
That it's sickening how much of a fanboy I am for Star Wars. But
Um,
all I could see in Buddy was the Joker. It was just the Joker's voice on Buddy.
but to me, and that's your opinion, and I respect it. Um, I thought his voice was just too robotic. It was too static. That scene where he kills one guy and he says, "This is for Tupac," because he was told to say that earlier on by one of the kids. It He never becomes as menacing as Brad Dorff. And
Well, it's because they did the whole plot element of it being a malfunctioning AI instead of a serial killer with voodoo powers that
yeah, so
become.
the movie starts off where you've got the warehouse in Vietnam where they're making the dolls, and you get a disgruntled worker who disinhibits all the mechanisms of the doll by, disinhibiting his violent reactions and all that. And uh, again, it's very similar to the original because you've got Andy, you've got Karen, and you've got Detective Mike. It is a remake because you've got Aubrey Plaza playing the mother from the original, and you've got Brian Tyree Henry playing Chris Sarandon's character, and you've got the whole idea of, to me, what it reminds me of is Alexa gone wrong. Yeah, because Buddy is controlling everything in the house, and the Kazlan company is becoming this thing. I suppose it's a take, it's a parody on Amazon, really.
I'm back.
Yeah,
I'm back. My
you're
internet
back. You're fine.
died.
I kept talking. Don't worry. I was just saying that the Kazlan company became a kind of a parody or a take on Amazon because you had that one scene in it where um, Brian Tyree Henry's mother calls a car that comes around to pick her up, if you remember that. And the car goes rogue because the doll is controlling it, and she's killed off. But the most brutal kill in it is the asshole boyfriend of Andy's mother, where and it's brutal. It's really well done, to be fair. He's fixing some Christmas lights on top of the fascia, um, on top of the house, and he falls off of the ladder. And as he lands on the ground, he gets a bilateral compound fracture where the bones protrude out through his. And believe you me, I know what a compound fracture is because when I was 11, I got a compound fracture. It is not pleasant, trust me. I had a crush injury to my left leg, which thankfully is okay to this day. But the compound fracture is where the bone protrudes out through your leg. And this guy gets a bilateral compound fracture, like the bones protrude up both of his legs. And then he's struggling on the lawn. And there's this some kind of lawnmower type machine which just makes absolute ribbons of his face. Where and of course they're watching one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies in it, if you remember. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the doll gets the idea of taking the face off. And then he gifts it to the kid. And there are some brilliant pieces in it, to be fair. But I think that Mark Hamill, I felt, was underutilized in it. And that's what disappointed me somewhat, you know. And at the end of the day, you have the whole store going rogue. You've got drones flying around the place that are, you know,
Yeah, he
cutting
had the
people.
ability to take over other uh, AI. I think it was,
Yeah,
wasn't
and you even had bear versions of the Buddy doll that were going rogue and trying to kill people as well. And there's again, there's a lot of these characters that are killed, apart from Detective Mike's mother, deserve it. Like you've got the creepy landlord who is watching people via CCTV, and he's watching them very inappropriately, and he gets a very brutal kill in that he uh, is trying to watch somebody, Andy's mother, getting ready for a shower. And of course, he derobes. and then all of a sudden he finds himself being attacked by the doll, and he's hanging onto this pipe, which your man turns the heat up on, and there's a circular saw underneath him, and he has to let go of the pipe because it becomes so hot, and he lands on the circular saw, and it's just, ah, you know. I mean, it's a treat for gore fests, gore hounds, yeah, definitely.
Bye
But
bye boss.
it's there's still talks of a remake. Oh, sorry, a sequel to that remake. Don't know how that's going to work. And between that and the Chucky TV series, which we're supposed to be getting a second series of, hopefully this fall. Um,
That might
between
get shot down, the sequel to that 2019 movie, because I mean, let's be real, the TV show kicked that film's ass. So
100%, absolutely 100%. And I brought my family to watch that in the cinema because we were Child's Play fans, and we enjoyed it, to a point. But no, it despite having one of the best voice actors of all time in Mark Hamill, it didn't it could never replicate what Brad Dourif did with Chucky. And I'm sure as long as Brad Dourif is breathing oxygen, he will be playing Chucky. It's a bit like Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis has vowed to stay on as Laurie Strode for as long as she can. Yeah. Mm. So we've come to the conclusion of our Child's Play franchise recap, and I hope you've
sorry that
enjoyed it.
my internet messed up, guys, and I dropped out for a minute. I don't know what was going on. That was weird. My lights flickered and
Uh,
the
it was
router
only
reset.
temporarily. But before we go, um, I think we'll touch on a little bit of horror movie news that I've become aware of. Uh, Jason Blum is at present promoting The Black Phone with Ethan Hawke, which has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. The trailer looks excellent. I'm going to see it this Sunday evening because I'm working tomorrow on Friday and Saturday, and I'm really looking forward to it. And in his promotion of the movie, he is telling people that he reckons he can get Robert Englund to return to play Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, yeah. He actually, I read that on Bloody Disgusting.
Hmm?
He wants to get the rights from New Line to resurrect the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Yeah,
And to be honest, Robert England has stated, even though England's got to be close to 70 now, easy.
he's 75.
Yeah, so he
But
says that if the script is right and everything looks good, he's got one more. He's got one more
mm,
left in him, but that's it. So Jason Blum's got to have he's got to have a plan B somewhere, because England's already stated he might have only one more left in him, and that's it.
well, Jason Blum will say that if he can get Ellen Burstyn back at 87 for the new Exorcist movie, which David Gordon Green is making, then he can get Robert Englund back. That's what he's claiming, anyway. Yeah. And the other horror news that we need to touch upon is Halloween Ends, which will not, so don't expect it this weekend, guys. We're not going to get a trailer this weekend in tandem with the Black Phone, which is another Blumhouse production. But instead, apparently, we may get it when Jordan Peele's Nope drops. So another few weeks, and hopefully it will be better than Halloween Kills. But what they're saying in their description of Halloween Ends is that Michael Myers is not the only antagonist in the film. So that's intriguing, as Morbius would say. And I do look forward to it. And it's amazing. I'm such a Halloween fan, and I've probably said this before. I saw Halloween Kills once, I wasn't pushed to see it a second time, and yet I've seen the new Scream 3 times since it came out in January.
I only watched
So
Halloween Kills once, and that was all I could take.
yeah, so
All I could take.
David Gordon Green uh, has a lot of redemption to his fans due. Yeah, so I do hope they don't mess it up. And another thing as well that's important to note is that they are saying that this isn't the end. And I don't think it will be either because Malik Akkad, who is the owner to the property, is his father, the late Mustafa Akkad, being the man who came in with Erwin Yablans, etc. Um, it will go back to him, I think. So they will no doubt resurrect Michael Myers at some point again in the future. Yeah. So let's fingers crossed. Hopefully it will be a good movie. And as I say, we've got the Black Phone to look forward to this weekend. And
And
next year we'll see.
I'm gonna try to put a panel together of a few friends, fellow Star Wars nerds, and maybe do a review discussion of this Obi-Wan show, which just wrapped up tonight, actually, or tomorrow, wherever you are in the world. There's 6 episodes, so I want to put together a little panel to discuss what our thoughts, what our likes and dislikes are for the first season of Obi-Wan, and if we think we'll get a second.
And I'm going on the record as saying that I don't mind Star Wars, but I'm not a Star Wars nerd. No,
Nah, I am, unfortunately.
no. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to apologize for it. But I know I've seen them. I've definitely seen the very first three, episode 4, 5, and 6. But I haven't seen anything more than that. I I haven't seen The Force Awakens or anything. And ironically, um, the was it the what's the second one called? The new one. Was it The Last Jedi? No?
Yep. The Last Jedi and then The Rise of Skywalker was the
Yeah.
third.
The Last Jedi. Scenes of that were shot about 25 minutes over the road from where I live. And
Well,
I
the
actually
supposed Jedi island that Luke's on is off the coast of Ireland.
there's several different parts where they shot it. So they would have shot it in the Skelligs in Kerry, and then they would have shot it in Browhead, where which is the most southerly point in Ireland, because I live on the coast, and Browhead is about 25 minutes over the road, and it's the most southerly point. And then they would have shot other scenes on the most northerly point in Ireland, which is Mallinhead. So, but again, I'm not licensed to talk about Star Wars because I'm not encyclopedic. I'm not as encyclopedic as you guys are. Yeah. But before we go, do drop some comments. Let us know what you'd like us to touch upon next. And yes, Charles, we will get around to doing these Universal Monsters in time. It's 2.5 weeks till I travel to California. So I will probably do one more show with you, and we will most likely touch on the Universal Monsters if we can. And then I'll have to take a break for a few weeks because I will be busy in California. And as soon as I return from California, we'll be back to normal again and we'll be doing some more shows on all things horror. And we have plenty of stuff to discuss, plenty of stuff that I'm sure will please everybody. We can talk about anything you want, guys. Just drop it in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe by all means. We'd be delighted if you would. John here is running a great show on Hawaii. I'm only privileged to be joining him all the way from Ireland, and I'm only privileged to be talking to people like you guys about stuff that we all love and that we want to see more and more and more of. Yeah,
And I'm blessed to have you as part of the team now, my friend.
my
So,
pleasure. Yeah, no, I'm only delighted. I really enjoyed. Like I say, I do some pieces with Dos Incredibles as well. They talk about so many different things, and I usually come in when they talk about horror, but they talk about wrestling and they talk about TV shows as well. But Jeff and Mario on Dos Incredibles Network are living in Texas in Austin. Two great guys if you want to follow those as well on YouTube and watch their shows. And I pop in and out and I do my horror pieces. And I will join them again, time permitting, going down the road. But for now, myself and John will be doing regular shows. But as I say, next week will be we I think it's safe to say we do our best to touch on the Universal monsters, John. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
I'm down to talk about some Frankenstein, some Creature from the Black
yeah,
Lagoon, some Invisible
yeah,
Man, all that good
yeah,
shit.
yeah. And after that, I'll take a little break. As I say, I need to prepare because I'm going to have a very long journey. I'm first of all on Sunday afternoon of the 10th. I am going to be traveling about 5 hours to Dublin. And then I'm going to be staying with my relative, and he's going to have to drop me to the airport at crazy o'clock in the morning because there's been some horrific queue situations in Dublin airport at the moment. My flight leaves at 12:35 in the afternoon, and there was travel chaos in Dublin airport, which I really hope doesn't affect me traveling to California on the 11th. And I'll be there for 10 days. And as soon as I'm back and I have my jet lag ridden from my body, I will be back on form. Yeah. And we might have to change our days as well
Okay.
because I'll be changing shifts from work. What we do every 6 months is for the first part of the 6 months of the year, I work Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then in July, we switch over and I work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So we might change the time of the show to, which would be a Thursday morning for me. But whatever the case may be, as I say, guys, we will touch upon whatever you want to talk about, and we'll only be happy to do so. Yeah.
So Thursday morning for you would be Wednesday night for me. That's fine, man. I don't have a social life. All the partying is all out of John's system. I don't party anymore. I sit in my living room.
Um,
I read books. I play
yeah.
an acoustic guitar, and I do podcasts. That's my fucking life.
But this to me, this to me is very social, and I I'm involved in a lot of stuff in the community as well. I have something on this Sunday that I need to do, and then next week we'll be talking about hopefully Universal monsters. And do please leave comments and let us know which ones you'd really like us to touch upon because there are so many of them, and we aim to please. And it's like when we did the vampire show last week. There was so many of them that we didn't get to talk about, like 30 Days of Night and Innocent Blood, and the list goes on. But we will do our level best to discuss them. So leave a like and subscribe and a comment and let us know what you want. Yeah.
And I want
So
to
it's
say
good
thanks to
morning for
every.
me
Well, I
and
was
it's
going to
good
say I
night
want
for
to
me.
say thanks to everybody that watched that because that video did incredibly on our YouTube channel. I'm not one that chases views and downloads and all. I don't give a shit. I do this for fun, but the fact that me and Brandon have done werewolves, vampires, and now Chucky, and the overwhelming response that we get from you guys has been kind of humbling. Yeah, it's
These
not
people.
like millions of views, but 200 or 300 views for a startup YouTube channel is not too shabby.
Yeah. No, we're very, very, very grateful to that. And it's great that people are coming on board and interacting with us because that's what we want. We merely want to interact with you guys and talk about what all of you would like discussed because we're all like-minded when it comes to the horror franchise, and it's a great community. I've yet to meet anyone in this horror community that is someone that I don't care for. and it's ironic that such a violent concept is full of decent people, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
And I want to apologize to everybody of me looking away. If you noticed, I was looking at my router because I'm gun shy at the moment. Like, fuck, don't go out on me. Don't go out on me. I'm about to end the show.
I can have that issue as well at times, so hopefully it doesn't happen anytime soon. But today was a good morning. Yeah, so I
Amen to
I'll let
that.
you be, and I will say, as I say, good morning to everybody, good night to everybody in Hawaii, and good morning to everybody everywhere else, and good night to everybody everywhere else, and the old jocular line, good night out there, whatever you are.
Yep. And John's getting ready to go his old ass to bed. Brandon's going to go get his day started. And with that said, this has been John Evans. That handsome fellow over there is Mr. Brandon Hayes. And we are out of here. See you again next time on Behind the Fiends, baby.
Talk to you soon.